John Rizzo spent 34 years in the Office of General Counsel at the CIA. For the purposes of our discussion today, in the post 9/11 years, he served as acting General Counsel, the Chief Legal Counsel for the agency for many years, and in that role was involved in all of the issues, very deeply involved in all the issues that we're going to be talking about tonight. He's now in private practice. First thing, please welcome John Rizzo. So the first question is, you saw the movie, and what did you think of the movie?
Well, I mean, as a movie fan, I thought it was ripping good entertainment. I suppose you're not asking me as a movie fan, however.
Well,
so
I don't mind starting there. Did you think it was a good film?
I thought it was a terrific film.
Okay.
I thought it might have been maybe 20 minutes too long, but I understand the actual takedown of bin Laden was done in real time, and that was, of course, riveting. Mm-hmm. I thought some of it could have been tightened a bit. I'm not talking about the torture scenes, but the movie itself. I think the lead up was a little, at least for me. Maybe I'm getting too old, but it could have been tightened a little bit.
I'm curious, were you able to watch it as a film goer? Just the way you'd normally go to another film?
No, I couldn't. I couldn't. I mean, I like everyone else. I had read the early reviews, and obviously the scenes at the beginning. So I was, got all of the attention, and so I was braced for that. And no, I couldn't. I mean, I walked in there thinking, let me try to separate myself from it. But certainly for the first half hour, since I was so, frankly, heavily involved in the creation of this interrogation program and the implementation of it, I did not have able to attain that level of objectivity.
All right, so let's go right to that then. Did it accurately portray the interrogation centers and techniques?
Well, in some respects, it did. Going first, as you know, the entire program's been declassified. All of the techniques that were used have been declassified, so none of that's a secret anymore. It is true that waterboard was one of the established techniques, as was, and I've been asked about this, the box. One of the approved techniques was actually two versions of a box, so a large box and a smaller box. So to that extent, those scenes, the techniques for accurate betrayed as have been approved. That said, and whenever I talk about this, I've talked about this in other forums. I always want to emphasize at the outset, I don't want to leave any sort of impression that the techniques themselves are somehow easy or benign, or that they've been damned for something they never were. The approved techniques, Lord knows, were rough enough. I just remember distinctly when I was first briefed by our people on what they thought was necessary to do, and they went through these techniques. I thought they were. That was one of the reasons I decided to go to the Department of Justice. I didn't know where the line on torture was, but certainly the waterboard and some of the others I thought were very, very brutal. So anyway,
Well, can I stop you there then?
Yeah.
Then since you've gone to that moment, I want to go there. The moment when they came to you and they said, here's what we'd like to do. Well, even for that, here's who we've got, right? Tell us about what year are we in, and tell us who they had and what they said. What did they say to you?
Well, mercifully, this wasn't the lawyers weren't depicted in the movie. But the fact of the matter was that the people in this counterterrorism center who had come up on very short notice with these proposed techniques came up to me to basically run through them. This would have been in March of 2002. Abu Zubaydah, the first high-level al-Qaeda detainee, had been captured the month before. And this program was originally designed for Zubaydah, although the techniques were subsequently approved for use on any high-level detainee thought to have actionable intelligence about another attack.
So they have him and they come to you and they say, here's what we'd like to do. Can we do it?
That was basically it. They walked through all of the proposed techniques. As I say, some of them were, I won't say benign, but some of them were almost Three Stooge-like in quality. I mean, attention grab, holding his face, or stomach grab. But some of them, like the waterboard, a term I'd never heard before, and the box struck me as Orwellian. I just had never, in my entire 25 years at CIA, I mercifully had never had to become conversant with the torture statute. So I didn't know where some of these were on the spectrum, but those sounded awfully close to me. So it's important to remember that there was a frantic, I guess is the word to describe, that there was a belief that Zubaydah had, if anyone was going to have actionable intelligence or about the second wave of attacks, it would be him. And word came back that he was in custody, but he was not talking, refused to talk. So there was a great sense of urgency here to this whole process. So we went down, I decided, talking to the director of CIA and other senior leaders, I decided we needed to get the Justice Department involved to determine whether, in fact, any of these techniques were doable.
Well, does doable mean torture? I mean, what is it that you're asked for as legal counsel? You said this is the first time you're looking at the torture statute.
Yeah. Well, as legal counsel, obviously, my primary responsibility is the applicability of U.S. laws to all sorts of agency covert activity. So, if it were torture, and to me that was as a lawyer, that was a legally definable term, then we wouldn't have done them, because that would have been illegal, would have been a war crime, and we just wouldn't have done it. As everyone knows now, the Justice Department issued memos back to me, which have come to be known, of course, as the torture memos, that concluded that the techniques as described did not violate the torture statute. So that was had it been torture, and I know, as a lawyer we have a certain standard, but other people have their own, moral beliefs about what is torture. But had it been torture as a lawyer, then that would have ended it right then and there.
If a Justice Department lawyer comes to you and says it's not torture, then what? You accept it, or do you have the power to say, you know what? I think it is. These things are obviously...
No, the Justice Department, the Office of Legal Counsel, has always been the final legal arbiter in the executive branch in terms of interpretation of statutes. But no, in all honesty, we still could have said no. We're not going to engage in these kinds of activity. I could have said that. So no, I'm not saying that we were simply going to be guided by the Justice Department conclusion. They were responsible for the final legal call, but it was our judgment, and those of us who were involved in this program from the beginning to make a judgment whether it was necessary, moral to proceed. And in that time, in that context, we decided that we needed to go ahead.
I guess you used that word moral. That's one of the questions that I'm wondering. Is your job to to decide what's legally allowed, or is there a difference to say what's morally right to do? Which was your job?
Well, as a CIA, CIA lawyer. This is the most extreme case, I suppose, about the dual roles of the CIA lawyer. But they always existed. The first job is to make a legal judgment, a legal call on a particular activity. The second role CIA lawyers undertake, and I did this for many years before 9/11, was to perhaps moral is not totally captures it, but it's basically counseling your clients, and your people in the CIA, your clients. Is this too risky? Is this too scary? Too stupid? So a lawyer at CIA performs those dual roles. I mean, this was obviously the starkest one I had to confront in my career.
I understand that, but in the years afterwards, there's a great debate in this country about the morality of these things. So I guess what I'm asking, was there a debate about the morality at the time, or was there I don't mean just a question, but you know what I mean. Was it just an argument about whether it was legally allowed?
Well, the primary argument was whether it was legally allowed. I must say there was a strong consensus that very aggressive measures were absolutely essential here to get this fellow Zebeda to talk, because everybody was convinced, again, that he was holding information about if there was going to be an imminent attack, he would know it, and he was telling his inquisitors that he just wasn't going to talk. So there was a moral, again, you have to remember the time frame here, 5 months after 9/11. I honestly can't say that there was a great deal of moral debate inside the agency or inside the executive branch or actually inside the Congress, because we did brief this program to the congressional leadership right after its inception. The driving force here, the overriding driving force was another attack cannot be allowed to happen.
One of the critiques of the film, though, was that it left out the debate that did happen. If I'm remembering right, there were FBI agents who were at the time there in these interrogation rooms, and at least in one instance, one supposedly said he was having nothing to do with this because he considered it illegal.
Yeah. No, believe me, I'm aware of that. I don't know, it would have made much very compelling movie for most audiences.
No, but that suggests that there was. I guess I'm still on the how much debate question was there.
Yeah.
Within the CIA, within all of the intelligence services doing it.
Well, I must say you're referring to Ali Soufan, his book. I don't know Mr. Soufan, but he was a trained interrogator. At the time, I don't remember hearing anyone. And I was just dealing, keep in mind, I'm just a desk jockey in this. I don't recall anyone in the executive branch, including the FBI, Washington, arguing that the techniques were immoral. There was the FBI view that they did not want to take part in a program that was inconsistent with their normal interrogation guidelines, which was a perfectly understandable position to take. But honestly, this debate about effectiveness or morality, I think I would have heard something along those lines, and I heard really at the time nothing from anywhere. I also, for the record, never heard anyone express concerns inside the agency about the morality or efficacy of these techniques. Ever.
Can I point out that John Brennan last week seemed to suggest that he had voiced concerns?
No, I'm aware of that. John Brennan. Oh, this just. Have I been off all this time? John Brennan is a longtime friend. I hope he and trust he will be confirmed. I think he'll be an excellent CIA director. But the fact of the matter is he never expressed any concerns to me. And I was, my office was 50 feet away from his. I would have liked to have thought he would have done so, or at least I would have heard about him, because that would have had an impact on me, because I had great respect for him. I just never heard from him directly, or ever heard that he had expressed any concerns to colleagues. And I've talked to other agency veterans, because, to tell you the truth, it did mean something to me. It would have been something I would have wanted to know at the time, and I can't find anyone who remembers that. So
Once all this started, how much interaction was there with interrogators carrying out the program? How much did they have to check with you or your office? Was it a constant? Was it an occasional? How much did you have a sense of knowing what was actually going on in the field?
Now we can get back to the movie here. Actually, one of the criticisms I have about the scenes depicted at the beginning. Again, keep in mind it is a movie, but at least I had the impression that the interrogator there was a largely almost ad lib quality to it. I mean, you won't talk, okay, here comes the water. You won't talk, string him up. The process for getting each and every technique approved was for lack of a better term, almost lawyerly. No one at that site could carry out any of those techniques on any detainee without coming back first to headquarters, specifying why, for instance, waterboard was necessary, why the other less aggressive measures weren't working. That would have to be reviewed first in the Director of Operations, then by me as a legal advisor, and then finally approved in the case of waterboard by the CI director. Only then does the word go back. So there was a strict written record process of what techniques were authorized to be carried out on which detainee, and at least I didn't get that from the movie.
How detailed was that? For example, when the agency allowed sleep deprivation for 72 hours, was it detailed as in, here's how you're allowed to keep the detainee awake, here's what you're allowed to do to keep him awake, what happens if he falls asleep?
Yeah, there were written guidelines at the beginning of the program. Once the Justice Department issued these memos, and if you go back and look at the memos, they're chilling in their detail, because that's the way we wanted them to be, because we didn't want any. That's always important for our people to get maximum legal protection. That required Justice Department to know every single excruciating detail. If you look at those memos taken together, those were converted into guidelines that were sent off to the facility in terms of how each technique was to be administered for how long. Again, in the case of sleep deprivation, I can't remember exactly, every 48 hours period would have to be separately approved by headquarters.
At that level of detail. Do you know of any cases where an interrogator exceeded his bounds?
Oh yeah, there were abuses. There were some abuses, not in the scheme of things a huge amount, but yeah, there were a couple of times. I'm talking now about the enhanced interrogation program, where an interrogator went beyond the pale. There was the use of a drill on one occasion. So sure, it wasn't a seamlessly carried out program, but by and large, I will continue to contend that it was closely monitored, and we tried to put as many strictest parameters as we could. But occasionally, sure, there was that, and when that happened, we promptly self-reported ourselves to the Department of Justice for Criminal Division for those abuses.
Did the film, one of the big questions about the film, clearly, is the connection that it makes between these interrogations or torture and getting Osama bin Laden. Do you think the film left the clear impression that the interrogations were instrumental, or even a sort of direct link to the killing of bin Laden?
Yeah, I got that. That was my impression. I mean, it'd be interesting if someone did not get that impression. I don't think there's any getting around it that they, as depicted in the movie.
So did I, but
Yeah.
I've heard from many other people. I mean, there seem to be other people, we'll talk
Yeah,
about this later,
yeah.
who got a different impression, or
Yeah.
at least
Yeah.
ambiguous.
Well, that, I mean, that's obviously the key question. I've been asked that many times even while I was still at CIA, but certainly since I retired. How important was this program? How valuable was it? I'm not an analyst. I'm not an operator. But I'll tell you what led me to conclude that the program, as it was being carried out, was worthwhile and was producing valuable intelligence. That's because I would watch every night. We would have a 5 o'clock meeting in the CIA director's office where all the developments of the day in the counterterrorism arena would be discussed. This was begun shortly after 9/11. The analysts, the operators, who were actually at the Maya level, if you will, carrying out this program, many of whom were not much older than the actors depicting this Maya, of these are career CIA people, no particular political bent. Some of whom I happen to know were not great fans of the Bush administration because of Iraq and other things. But watching them every night, talking about the results of these interrogations, what was being produced, what was yielded. In fact, they were so positive and consistent that the intelligence was valuable and good and plentiful. Actually, more than anything else, I mean, that's what convinced me that the program was important and worthwhile. Because if it hadn't been, then one was left with the conclusion that these people and the rest of us in the agency were carrying it out for what purpose? I mean, we weren't totally myopic. We knew that as the years went on, this program was going to get many of us into professional difficulties. But yet these people persisted. So I know that's sort of a subjective and impressionistic explanation of why I thought the program actually worked. But that's really what it comes down to, at least in my mind. I mean, a number of intelligence reports. How many thousands, and honestly, sometimes I get lost in that.
But you think the film left the impression that the interrogations were instrumental or important to getting bin Laden, and you think, in fact, that's true?
Well, no, what I was trying to say was I was convinced that the program over time was yielding valuable intelligence against
I know,
against
but I'm trying to
Al-Qaeda.
push you to the next step.
Yeah, I don't honestly, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard for me to believe. I mean, the Senate Intelligence Committee, I'm sure this will be raised, has apparently completed a report, 6-year study, maybe it's a 4-year study, 6,000 words about the interrogation program, and basically, if the media reports are correct, basically concluded it was worthless, and that it played, and in particular, played no role in the ultimate takedown of bin Laden. Now, I find that hard to believe. I mean, I just find that hard to believe. A program that went on for 7 years yielded thousands of intelligence reports. As I say, was followed and administered and analyzed by career agents, hundreds of career agent people over the years. That none of that yielded anything. What I cannot tell you if it was instrumental in taking down bin Laden. But what I'm confident in saying that it played a role. It must have played a role. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Before I let you go here, just to go back to when you and I talked on the phone the other day, and you told me about that first briefing when this all came up. You said you knew that you were on hazardous ground. I think that's what you told me.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, as I say, I mean, I'm listening to these guys, and describing things I had never, an hour before, I had never dreamed of ever hearing about in my life. I had been at the agency at that point for 25 years as a lawyer. I'd come to acquire some idea of what the agency is remarkably able every 4 or 5 years to get itself into some sort of huge mess. So I'd been through my share of political scandals over the years. I was also aware that, again, this was early 2002, that absent another attack, the political culture being what it was, as the memory of 9/11 receded into memory, the political pendulum would swing. I mean, you all remember in the wake of 9/11, the charge was that CIA was too risk averse, hadn't been aggressive enough in going after Al-Qaeda. I just knew deep down that would not last. And so hearing about these techniques, and you know, my eyes were wide open when I advocated that we at least explore these with the Department of Justice. I knew that it would lead us. I mean, the good news is there would be, if there was not a second attack. Bad news would be if there was not a second attack, then the political pendulum would swing, and that someday, somehow, somewhere, these techniques would become public. Every CI secret eventually becomes public, and this was a huge one. So I knew that going in, but
And 10 years later or so, do you still feel that waterboarding, et cetera, was legal, was not torture?
the way it was administered, yes.
Okay. John Rizzo, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.